Today we're making jam, and this is the easiest way to make jam, I promise. I found a new appreciation for jam after my wife started making sourdough bread. Some jam on there, on some fresh sourdough, nothing better. So I wanted to share my newfound appreciation and method for making that jam with you. So I want to approach this recipe such that you can use any sort of fruit that you have on hand. So I'm using strawberries here, but again, you can use any sort of fruit. We'll give you the ratios such that you can make jam from whatever you have on hand. It's a pound of strawberries that I measured out. I quartered them and then cut them in half from there. But you can make those pieces as big or as small as you want. If you have a potato masher, if you like them more mashed, you can mash them. You can also, if you don't have a potato masher, one method you could do is just put them in a Ziploc bag and just sort of pound them down and crush them that way. Whatever works for you. Mine are quartered and then halved, like I said. Next we have sugar. So sugar is going to depend on your taste. I think a good ballpark is to start at roughly a third of the weight of fruit you have in sugar. A third to a half is a good range if you ask me. I like to put my sugar in and my ingredients in and then just taste it and then determine whether I want to add a little more sugar or not. But a third to a half of the weight in fruit you have is a good approximation for the amount of sugar you should be using. Fun fact, did you know that in the UK you actually have to have equal parts sugar to fruit in order for it to be called jam? And it used to be higher than that roughly a decade ago. You used to have 60% of the contents be sugar in order for it to be called jam. Wow, talk about sweet. But you do things to what you like. Plain and simple. So we've got our strawberries, we've got our sugar, and then we have salt, and it's just a couple generous pinches of salt. And what salt is going to do is it's just going to act as a flavor enhancer. You won't get saltiness out of it, but it's a flavor enhancer. And then we have pectin. And how much pectin do we have? This is roughly 17 grams of pectin, or like 2 level tablespoons is an easy way to think about it. And what is pectin? Pectin is just, it's fiber from fruit. So think apples or think citrus peel. And what it's going to do for us is it's going to act as a gelling agent for that jam. The pectin shouldn't have any flavoring. It might have a slight bit of bitterness to it, but it's essentially flavorless. And what you want to do when you're looking for pectin for this recipe is make sure you're getting a powdered pectin instead of a liquid pectin. Also, stay away from something that may be called like universal pectin. What you want is a fruit pectin in powder form. That's going to work perfectly for you. Now let's actually start to get mixing, and then we'll go from there. So I'm just going to pour the sugar in. We'll get the salt in. And before I actually add the pectin, I'm just going to mix and then I want to get a sense of what the sweetness is like. And all of that's going to depend on how ripe your berries are or whatever fruit you're using is. I just want to get a sense of what it's going to taste like to see if I should add more sugar. My general range is going to be, like we started with here, a third of the weight of the fruit in sugar, up to roughly a half of the weight of the fruit in sugar. So we will just add if needed. I'm just going to give it a quick taste. It's actually really nice. It's got a little bit of a little sourness to it, but some sweetness to it. I think my kids will actually like it a little sweeter, and they are big eaters of this jam. So I'm just going to add a little more sugar in to taste. So let's taste. That's perfect. So again, start with that third of the weight of the fruit with in sugar. Add as you see fit. Again, the higher guidepost for me is half of that weight of fruit in sugar. You can go beyond that. Do whatever feels good to you, but at least you have some guideposts to work with there. Now I'm just going to add the pectin. And what we're going to do is we're just going to mix this until all the granules seem to be gone. You can't notice the powder anymore. And then what we'll do is we'll let it sit for about 10 minutes, and that will start sort of getting things, allowing the pectin to start its work. So that 10-minute period is important. Don't skip that. But that's what we'll do next. And of course, if you wanted to use something like an immersion blender, if you like that fruit to get a little more fine, go ahead and whip that out at this stage. All right, so we're gonna let it sit for 10 minutes. Now the key to this method is actually a sous vide machine. So if you're unfamiliar with sous vide, don't let that intimidate you. A very affordable appliance, great bang for the buck. If you don't know what it is, this may be your clue to actually do a little investigating. Subscribe to my channel. I would love to teach you about it. So sous vide is the key to this method, which is the easiest method for making jam. So I'm gonna pull out my machine. I'm gonna get the water going. We're gonna set that water temp to 196. And then we'll put these in jars. We'll drop them in for half an hour. We'll take them out, put them in the fridge overnight, and we'll have our jam. So unlike other methods, you're not gonna sit there and put it into a Dutch oven and skim it and wait and do like a spoon test. None of that. We're gonna put these in jars. We're gonna drop them in the water, in those jars, take the jars out, let them cool, and put them in the fridge. Simple as that. So I got my sous vide machine set up. We're using the Joule Turbo today. Fantastic machine. We are at 194. I think I said 196 before. 194 to 196. Anywhere in that range is fine. And the water is ready to go. So let's take, and it's been the 10 plus minutes of having the pectin interact with the fruit to get that gelling starting. So I've got two mason jars here. One is 12 ounces, the other is 10 ounces. I don't think I'll need, I don't think we'll fill both of them, but I have them both handy here. So let's start putting the fruit in. I'm glad I grabbed the second one because we will need it. And what you're going to do with the jars themselves is you just want to make them finger tight. You don't want to overly tighten them. So finger tight is what you want to do. Let's fill the second one. Pours in really easy with these bowls with little lip spouts on them. Makes it much easier. So we're about halfway on the 10 ounce one. So that means you could use two 8 ounce jars. That would work well for a pound of fruit. But this is what I have on hand, so that's what we're using. Again, just finger tight, not too tight, finger tight. And I'm gonna grab a pair of tongs because we are dealing with high temperature water. Don't stick your hand in there. Grab some tongs, lower them in. Handy dandy tongs. If you have the special contraption jar type deal for these, use those by all means. Just drop them in. And you'll notice I use sous vide balls. Particularly when you're doing things at higher temp, it just helps keep things, get you to that temp a lot faster because you might not get there if you don't use some sort of a lid. So be aware of that. Oops, there goes some balls. That's okay. That's kind of fun. I'll go find the rest of them. I'm gonna weight down the, you can see one of them's floating, one of them's not. The one that isn't full is floating. I'm gonna weight it down just in case. I can see on the one that is all the way down, you see some bubbles coming up, and that's a good sign. I wanna see the same thing on my other jar, so I'm gonna weight it down. balls that are there. Next time I'll put in less sous vide balls. Or less water. So we're gonna let that run for half an hour. And then we'll be back. We'll take them out, see how things look, and we'll let them cool and put them in the fridge. That's it. All right, so our half an hour is up. We'll take them out now. One thing I should have mentioned before is always be sure to use a trivet when you're cooking sous vide, particularly at these higher temps. What you don't want is a cracked countertop. So always make sure you use a trivet, particularly when you're dealing with temperatures as high as we're using here. But let's get the jars out. Again, don't use your hands. The water is hot. Number one. And number two. So I'm just gonna let these get to roughly room temp. I'm gonna leave them out and then I'm just gonna stick them in the fridge. And we're gonna leave them overnight and we'll come back tomorrow and do the taste test for our strawberry jam. So the jam was in the fridge overnight. Let's try it. Moment of truth. So you want to stir it up a little bit. And if it feels too runny to you, not a big deal. Next time, just add a little more pectin to it. You'll get something thicker. Do what suits you. Now, we've got a piece of sourdough here. I'm going to spread it on that. And if you haven't tried some jam with your sourdough, please do. It's amazing. So you just spread it on, and we will take a bite. It's beautiful. Getting a little messy. Let's try it. That's perfect. I love that it's really fruit forward, it's bright, it's fresh, you can tell. It's just amazing. It's very different than the store-bought stuff. So part of the beauty of this method too is that you small batch it, so you make it in quantities that you'll eat within a month. Can you do like proper canning techniques? At this point, I'm uncomfortable saying yes, because I think the evidence is mixed and the research is mixed on that. But I think you could certainly try it, but do be careful. The things you want to watch out for, of course, are things like you want to use new lids with your canning jars. You want to check the pH. You want to be around that, inside that magic 4.6 pH level, right? So you want to be a lot more scientific around it. You don't want the risk of botulism is never worth it. So the evidence is mixed on whether you should or you shouldn't. So I'll leave it at that. But with this method, the beauty of it is you can small batch it, so you make it in quantities that you'll eat within a month, and you'll be good. I've also got, just so you can see these things side by side, I'll spread a little bit of the jam here. And I know it's not the same, but I've got a couple jellies. And this is the Welch's jelly, which I'll put to the side here. And just so you can see them, you can even tell by the way it comes out, right? Like, it's very different, the number 2 ingredient, or number 1 maybe. I'll verify, but it's probably high fructose corn syrup. And number 2 is corn syrup, number 3 is high fructose corn syrup. So there you go. But, jelly's gonna be thicker, always, than jam is. So, let me get another spoon. So we're not looking for it to be as thick as that, but here's another jam. This is a red pepper jam, but this is a much more natural type of jam. You can see how that spreads. And it is also on the runnier side. This is a Brownwood Farms, and there's nothing but non-preservatives in here. So ours is much more akin to the non-preservative type of jam. But if you, like I said, if you like it a little thicker, add a little pectin to it. The flavors are marvelous. Add the sugar to what you like, and you can even play around with like adding some citrus to your non-citrus jams, just to play around those flavors. But this is a great way to use some of that fruit that might be over-ripened in your fridge or what have you. Make a lovely jam. You won't be sorry. I hope that was helpful.